Well, there are a lot of challenges. One of the key ones that we've been discussing this week is the challenge of how do you articulate the value of kind of the tactics of information security in a way that business values and that they can connect back to their mission objectives. And one of the areas around that is that there is a disconnect between the language that IT tends to speak and the language that business tends to speak. So part of this is identifying good translation skills, finding people who can speak on both sides of that, and then creating simple and visually compelling artifacts to be able to convey the value and the status of what you're doing so that the business has confidence that you're actually doing what's necessary to protect the objectives of the mission, and that you're doing that in an efficient way, effectively, and that you're doing it continuously over time. Our solutions are unique in that we provide better oversight of the state of systems than anyone else. So measuring systems against objective standards, being able to identify how well you're doing from both a security and a compliance perspective, but how you protect the availability and the reliability of systems in that way. The other aspect that's unique for us is that we provide the connective tissue to take that granular activity of the instrumentation of individual systems and map in a traceable way all the way from the system up to the mission that it supports, how it supports it, and what kind of risk is being controlled or managed through your securing of a particular system. So the idea here is that no matter where you sit in the organization, if you're a system operator or you're a department or a project or mission manager or you're a senior executive, you should be able to at a glance determine how well you're doing against your security targets, how well you're doing against your compliance objectives, how well you're doing in terms of protecting availability, and then being able to take all that information and automate that so that you can reliably present information to people with very little effort. And we are able to do that from the granular all the way up to the high-level executive value. The roundtable format was very interesting to me. I'd never been in an environment where that kind of structure was used, and I got to say I love it because we had a small enough group to have a nice interactive dialogue. We were able to talk about not only the challenges that people were facing, but share some best practices in terms of how people are approaching the solutions to some of these problems, get some good ideas to kind of go back to work and act on. And I don't think we'd have come across that in just a typical presentation style. So I love the roundtable format. I found that a couple of things were unique about the GTRA event. First was the level and the quality of the attendees. A lot of conferences that we go to talk about bringing in senior executive leadership. GTRA actually did that. So we saw decision makers and key strategists for a lot of the agencies, and that caliber of interaction was huge for us. I mean, we were able to talk to people who actually make the decisions in terms of the overall direction of technology strategy. They understand the big picture, and having that kind of a dialogue, to be able to sit down with key policy and decision makers, to be able to talk about not only the tactics of security, but talk about why things are being done and what some of the pressures that they're facing will be. That's something I've never experienced in any other kind of event. My advice to my peers would be to engage with GTRA. You get a lot out of it, and you get a lot higher quality information than you would through other means. So you can talk with senior level executives, you can talk about topics that are actually important and actionable that are on everyone's minds. But more importantly, I think this is a community where you can build relationships, you can get to know the nature of the problems that people are facing, and you can share a lot of information about how to approach those in an effective way. So it's one of those cases where the rising tide lifts all boats, and we can exchange practices and people can learn from each other without having to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's hugely valuable. And from a software vendor perspective, for example, the kind of information that we get directly relates to things that we need to understand as we move forward on our roadmap so that we add more value over time. And then we actually connect the dots and hit the mark in terms of delivering solutions that matter to what these agencies are concerned about.